Ottoman Tunis refers to the episode of the Turkish presence in Africa during the course of 3 centuries from the 16th century until the 18th century, when Tunis was officially integrated into the Ottoman Empire as the Eyalet of Tunis, eventually including all of the Maghreb except Morocco. The Ottoman Empire began with the takeover of Algiers in 1516 by the Ottoman Turkish corsair and Baylibi Oruç Reis. The first Ottoman conquest of Tunis took place in 1534 under the command of Barbarossa Hayreddin Pasha, the younger brother of Oruç Reis, who was the Capudan Pasha of the Ottoman fleet during the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent. However, it wasn't until the final Ottoman reconquest of Tunis from Spain in 1574 under Capudan Pasha Uluc Ali Reis that the Turks permanently acquired the former Hafside Tunisia, retaining it until the French occupation of Tunisia in 1881, initially under Turkish rule from Algiers. Soon the Ottoman Porte appointed directly for Tunis a governor called the Pasha, supported by Janissary forces. Before long, however, Tunisia became in effect an autonomous province, under the local bey. This evolution of status was from time to time challenged without success by Algiers. During this era, the governing councils controlling Tunisia remained largely composed of a foreign elite who continued to conduct state business in the Ottoman Turkish language. Attacks on European shipping were made by Barbary pirates, primarily from Algiers, but also from Tunis and Tripoli. Yet after a long period of declining raids, the growing power of the European states finally forced its termination after the Barbary Wars. Under the Ottoman Empire, the boundaries of Tunisia contracted, it lost territory to the west and to the east. In the 19th century, the rulers of Tunisia became aware of the ongoing efforts at political and social reform in the Ottoman capital. The Bey of Tunis then, by his own lights but informed by the Turkish example, attempted to effect a modernizing reform of institutions and the economy. Tunisian international debt grew unmanageable. This was the reason or pretext for French forces to establish a protectorate in 1881. A remnant of the centuries of Turkish rule is the presence of a population of Turkish origin. Historically, the male descendants were referred to as the Kuloklis. Mediterranean rivalry. In the 16th century, control of the western Mediterranean was contested between Spaniard and Turk. Both were confident due to recent triumphs and consequent expansion. Spain then formulated an African policy, a series of presidios in port cities along the African coast. For their part, the Ottoman Turks had fulfilled their long-term ambition of capturing Constantinople in 1453. Then successfully invaded further into the Balkans, and later conquered Syria and Egypt. Then Turkish corsairs became active from bases in the Maghreb. Spain captured and occupied several ports in North Africa, including Mers el-Kabir, Oran, Tripoli, and Bougie. Spain also established treaty relations with a half-dozen others. Among these agreements were ones with Algiers, which included Spanish occupation of the offshore island Penondarajul, with Tlemcen, a city about 40 kilometers inland, and with Tunis, whose Spanish alliance lasted on and off for decades. Near Tunis, the port of Goleta was later occupied by Spanish forces who built there a large and strong presidio. They also constructed an aqueduct to Tunis for use by the Kasbah. The Hafside dynasty had since 1227 ruled Tunisia, enjoying prestige when it was the leading state of the Maghreb, or barely surviving in ill-favored times. Extensive trade with European merchants continued over some centuries, an activity which led to state treaties. Yet the Hafsids also harbored corsairs who raided merchant shipping. During the 15th century, the Hafsids employed as bodyguards a Christian force of hundreds, nearly all Catalans. In the 16th century, the Hafside rule grew weak, limited often to Tunis. The last 3 Hafside sultans, Al-Hassan, his son Ahmad, and his brother Muhammad, made inconsistent treaties with Spain. Yet the cross-cultural Hafsid alliance with Spain was not as unusual as it might seem, given the many Muslim-Christian treaties, despite recurrent hostilities. Indeed, during the early 16th century, France allied with the Ottomans against the Spanish King Carlos. As an indirect result of Spain's Africa policy, a few Muslim rulers encouraged Turkish forces to enter the region to counter the Spanish presence. Yet the Hafsid rulers of Tunis came to see the Turks and their Corsair allies as a greater threat and entered a Spanish alliance, as also did the Saadids of Morocco. Nonetheless, many Maghreban Muslims strongly preferred Islamic rule, and the Hafsids' decades-long Spanish alliance was not generally popular, indeed anathema to some. On the other hand, the Saadi dynasty sultans of Morocco successfully played off Iberian against Turk, thus managing to remain both Muslim-ruled and independent of the Ottoman grasp. In this naval struggle, the Ottoman Empire supported many corsairs, who raided European commercial shipping in the Mediterranean. The corsairs later would make Algiers their principal base. The architects of Ottoman rule in the Maghreb were Arjuj Oruk, and his younger brother Khizr Khair al-Din, Arabic epithet. Both were called Barbarossa. The Muslim brothers hailed from obscure origins in the Greek island of Mideli or Mytilene, ancient Lesbos. After acquiring fighting experience in the eastern Mediterranean, the two brothers arrived in Tunis as corsair leaders. By 1504 they had entered into a privateer agreement with the Hafsid Sultan Muhammad b. al-Hassan. By it, the prizes were to be shared. The brothers operated from Galeta, Halq al-Wadi. They ran similar operations from Jabbar in the south, where Arjuj was governor. During these years in Spain, those who remained non-Christian were required to leave, including Muslims. At times Arjuj employed his ships to transport a great many Moorish Andalusians to North Africa, especially Tunisia. For these efforts Arjuj won praise and many Muslim recruits. Twice Arjuj joined the Hafsids in unsuccessful assaults on Bugis, held by Spain. Then the brothers set up an independent base in Jijili east of Bugis, which attracted Hafsid hostility. In 1516 Arjuj and his brother Khair al-Din, accompanied by Turkish soldiers, moved further east to Algiers, where he managed to wrestle control away from the Sheikh of the Tharalibar tribe, who had treated with Spain. By intra-city political cunning, in which the tribal chief and later 22 notables were killed, control of Algiers passed to the Barbarossa brothers. The Turkish brothers were already Ottoman allies. Yet in 1518, when Arjuj led an attack against Tlemcen, then held by a Spanish ally, Arjuj was killed by Muslim tribal forces and the Spanish. His younger brother Khair al-Din inherited control of Algiers, but left that city and for some years was based to its east. After returning to Algiers, in 1529 he captured from Spain the offshore island Peñón de Argel, whose guns had controlled the port. By constructing a causeway joining these islands he created an excellent harbour for the city. Khair al-Din continued to direct large-scale raids on Christian shipping and against the coastlands of Mediterranean Europe, seizing much wealth and taking many captives. He won several naval battles and became a celebrity. In 1533 Khair al-Din was called to Constantinople, where the Ottoman Sultan made him Pasha and the Admiral Kapıdan İdare over the Turkish navy. He acquired control over many more ships and soldiers. In 1534 Khair al-Din, taking advantage of a revolt against the Hafsid al-Hassan, invaded by sea and captured the city of Tunis from Spain's allies. Yet the following year the Emperor Charles V organized a fleet under Andrea Doria of Genoa, composed predominantly of Italians, Germans, and Spaniards, which proceeded to recapture Tunis in 1535, following which the Hafsid Sultan Moulay Hassan was re-established. Yet Khair al-Din escaped. Thereafter, as supreme commander of naval forces for the Ottoman Empire, Khair al-Din was largely preoccupied with affairs outside the Maghreb. A few decades passed until in 1556 another Turkish corsair dragget, ruling in Tripoli, attacked Tunisia from the east, entering Kairouan in 1558. Then in 1569 Uluj Ali Pasha, a renegade corsair, now the successor to Khair al-Din as the Bailey of Algiers, advanced with Turkish forces from the west, and managed to seize the Spanish presidio Goleta and the Hafside capital, Tunis. After the key naval victory of the Christian Armada at Lepanto in 1571, Don Juan de Austria in 1573 retook Tunis for Spain, restoring Hafside rule. Yet Uluj Ali returned in 1574 with a large fleet and army, and captured Tunis with finality. To the Turkish Sultan he then sent by ship, imprisoned, the last ruler of the Hafside dynasty. The Spanish-Ottoman truce of 1581 quieted the Mediterranean rivalry between these two world powers. Spain kept a few of its Maghreban presidios and ports, yet both Spanish and Ottoman empires had become preoccupied elsewhere. The Ottomans would claim suzerainty over Tunisia for the next 3 centuries. However, its effective political control in the Maghreb would prove to be of short duration. Ottomans in the west. Absent the entry of the Turks into the western Mediterranean, the political situation favored the Christian north. In overall strength, the various European powers led by Spain continued to increase their lead. Among the local Maghreban states in comparison, business was in decline and the governments weak and divided. The long-term future seemed to present the possibility, or probability, of an eventual reconquest of North Africa from the north. Accordingly, the intervention by another rising foreign power, co-religionists from the east, namely the well-armed Ottoman Turks, appeared crucial. It tipped the scales in the Maghreb, allowing for several centuries of continued rule by the older Muslim institutions, as redone for Turkish notions. Furthermore, the successful but questionable tactic of mounting raids on European commercial shipping by the corsairs of Barbary fit well enough into the Mediterranean strategy pursued by the Ottoman Porte at Constantinople. Turkey was frequently combated by native North African rulers, and never gained any hold over Morocco. But the Turks were nonetheless a powerful ally for Barbary, diverting Christian energies into Eastern Europe, threatening Mediterranean communications, and absorbing those forces which might otherwise have turned their attention to reconquest in Africa. So for the first time the Ottomans entered into the Maghreb, eventually establishing their governing authority, at least indirectly, along most of the southern coast of the Mediterranean. During the 16th and subsequent centuries their empire was widely recognized as the leading Muslim state in the world. Islam's primary focus. The Ottoman Empire was the leader of all Islam for nearly half a millennium. The Turkish Sultan became the caliph. This Ottoman contact enriched Tunisia by its distinctive Islamic culture and institutions, which differed markedly from the familiar Arab world. For more than half a millennium Islamic doctrines had filtered through Turkish experience, whose ethnic origin lay in Central Asia, resulting in unique developments and new perspectives. For example, Turks wrote their own Ghazi sagas of frontier warfare, no doubt following Islamic traditions of early Arab conquests, yet informed by legends of their own derived from life on the steppes of Central Asia. Due to the exigencies of rule, and its large geographic jurisdiction, the Ottoman state took the lead in Muslim legal developments for some centuries. Sources of imperial law included not only Islamic fiqh and inherited Roman Byzantine codes, but also the traditions of the great Turkish and Mongol empires of Central Asia. The Turkish jurist Ebu As-Sud Effendi was credited with the harmonization for use in Ottoman courts of the Kanun and the Syriac. Ottoman popular literature and much of the learning of its elites was expressed in the Turkish language. Turkish became the idiom for state business in Tunisia, and its unique flavors percolated throughout Tunisian society. After Arabic and Persian, it is the third language of Islam and for centuries has played a very important role in the intellectual life of Muslim culture. In addition, the Turks brought their popular customs, such as their music, clothing, and the coffee house. The new energy of Turkish rule was welcome in Tunis and other cities, and the regime's stability appreciated by the clerical ulama. Although the Ottomans preferred the Hanifi school of law, some Tunisian Maliki jurists were admitted into administrative and judicial positions. Yet the rule remained one of a foreign elite. In the countryside, efficient Turkish troops managed to control the tribes without compromising alliances, but their rule was unpopular. Ottomans' military prowess enabled them to curb the tribes rather than placate them. An image of Turkish domination and Tunisian subordination emerged everywhere. The rural economy was never brought under effective regulation by the central authority. For revenues, the government continued to rely primarily on corsair raids against shipping in the Mediterranean, an activity then more profitable than trade. With the Spanish-Ottoman Accord in 1581, Spain's attention turned away and corsair activity increased. Yet peaceful trade and commerce suffered. Introduction into Tunisia of a Turkish-speaking ruling caste, whose institutions dominated governance for centuries, indirectly affected the lingering divide between Berber and Arabic in the settled areas. This bipolarity of linguistic culture had been reactivated by the 11th century invasion of the rebellious Arabic-speaking Banu Hilal. Subsequently, Arabic had gained the ascendancy, and use of Berber had been thereafter gradually eroding. Then this assertive presence of a Turkish-speaking elite seemed to hasten the submergence of Berber speech in Tunisia. Pasha role in Tunis. After Tunisia's fall to the Ottoman Empire, a pasha was eventually appointed by the Porte. Pasha is Ottoman imperial nomenclature indicating a high office, a holder of civil or military authority, e.g., the governor over a province. During its first few years under the Ottomans, however, Tunisia was ruled from the city of Algiers by a corsair leader who held the Ottoman title Beylibi. Its early capture gave Algiers some claim to primacy within the expanding Turkish Empire. It was only under the Ottomans that Algiers became a favored city. Before, Algiers was not particularly significant. The middle Maghreban coast for the most part had long lain in the shadows of Tunis to its east and of Morocco or Tlemcen to its west. During early Ottoman rule, Tunisia lost control over Constantine. The area was historically within Hafsid domains, but fell to attacks led by the Beylibi Khair al-Din of Algiers. Later Tunisia also lost Tripoli, ruled by another Turkish corsair, the renegade Dragut or Turgut race. In 1518 the younger Barbarossa Khair al-Din became the first Ottoman Beylibi in Algiers. His rule was autocratic, without the moderating advice of a council. As Beylibi he captured Tunis in 1534, holding it only a year. In 1536 Khair al-Din left the Maghreb, promoted to command the Ottoman fleets. 4 Beylibis in succession then ruled in Algiers and over areas of North Africa fallen to Ottoman control. The renegade corsair Uluj Ali was appointed Pasha of Algiers and its last Beylibi in 1568. The Porte instructed him to capture Tunis. He was perhaps, with Khair al-Din, the greatest figure in Turkish rule of the Maghreb. In 1569 Uluj Ali took Tunis, holding it 4 years, yet in 1574 he again took possession of the city. Tunis thereafter remained under the Beylibi in Algiers, Uluj Ali, until his death in 1587. The office was then abolished, perhaps due in part to these few brief periods of Algerian rule over Tunis in the early Ottoman era. Later Turkish rulers in Algiers more than once tried to exercise control over Tunisian affairs by force, e.g., during intradynasty conflicts. Yet eventually such interference by Algiers was each time checked. The Beyliği had exercised the authority of suzerain in the name of the Ottoman Sultan over Tunis. The Beyliği was the supreme Ottoman authority in the Western Mediterranean, and responsible for conducting the war against the Christian enemies of the empire. When Uluj Ali died, the Turkish Sultan discontinued the office, in effect normalizing the administration of the Mughraban provinces in acknowledgement of an end to the long struggle with Spain. In its place, for each province, the office of Pasha was established to oversee provincial government. Thus, in 1587 a Pasha became Ottoman governor of Tunisia. Under the Pasha served a bey, among whose duties was the collection of state revenue. From 1574 to 1591 a council, composed of senior Turkish military and local notables, advised the Pasha. The language used remained Turkish. With permanent Ottoman rule, the government of Tunis acquired some stability. The prior period had been made insecure and uncertain by the fortunes of war. Yet, the new Ottoman Pasha's grip on power in Tunisia was, if anything, of short duration. 4 years later, in 1591, a revolt within the ranks of the occupying Turkish forces thrust forward a new military commander, the Dey, who effectively took the Pasha's place and became the ruling authority in Tunis. The Pasha remained as a lesser figure, who nonetheless continued to be appointed from time to time by the Ottoman Porte. Within a few decades, however, the Bey of Tunis added to his office the title of Pasha. Soon thereafter, the Bey's growing power began to eclipse that of the Dey. Eventually the Bey of Tunis became the sole ruling authority. The Beys of Tunis always kept well apart from any Ottoman attempts to compromise their political grip on power. Yet the Beys, as Muslim rulers, were also dignified by the honor and prestige associated with the title of Pasha, with its direct connection to the Ottoman Caliph, whose religious significance included being the commander of the faithful.